We are doing our report refresher, or just kind of going over stuff. This has been asked for a while, and we saw another push for it and a need during the survey that we got back. So we wanted to make sure this got done right away so that everybody could get what they need. We will continue ongoing support as needed, because you know what, we do what you need. So what I would like to find out first, before we go through what we've planned, is ask about, what is it that you're looking for? What frustrates you about the report writing process? What do you wish you knew better? What do you think you've forgotten that need to be reminded about? Or anything along those lines. Anybody have anything to say? Okay. I will presume that you want to see what it is we're going to say. And then there is going to be Q&A kind of things at the end. So if your needs aren't met, please use that time to speak up for it. But here's what we've planned. We're going to review the report format that is our current report format for oh, I'm sorry. Thank you, Kara. How to make information concise and tell the whole story. Okay. Okay. So we are going to review the report format. We have a sample report case study that we're using. I did send that out. I think most of you probably have that. If you don't, I can get it to you afterwards as well. We're going to talk about what is in that case study and what would belong on the report. And we're going to then take some statements that maybe you're struggling with on your current case and how to phrase some of that stuff, if you would like to talk about that. And then finally, any additional tips or Q&A as we go through things. Okay. So the first thing I want to talk about is the report format. This is the three basic areas that you are engaged in: the contacted parties, the findings, and the best interest case summary. So for contacted parties, I think people probably have a pretty good sense of what it is that they're doing here. You should, with all of your contacts being in Optima, you should be able to open Optima and just kind of go straight down the list. Some people have asked me, well, do I include all those texts? And I say yes. If there are different dates in a row that you have a whole bunch of texts, then by all means, include those so you can show patterns. If you have repeatedly sent or made voicemails that haven't been returned, and I see a list of voicemails, and I'm like, that doesn't sound like somebody's returning those calls, that makes a difference. When I'm reading the contacted parties and I can look and see who attended at the different people, I can tell, oh, this person was the supervisor while you were there at the house. I can see, oh, they must have texted to confirm prior to showing up, or they made a call. When some of that stuff is missing, I think, how are you just showing up? Are people, so these are kind of things that might ferment in somebody's mind as they look at the contacted parties. So it does show depth of what you're doing as well as timelines. And I don't know that the court necessarily often stews on a lot of that, but if they have questions and they look at it, those are some of the things that they might be thinking. One thing you don't need to include is information about the conversations with your advocate manager. That's just all CASA stuff. It's internal. So that stuff isn't necessarily reported. And you don't need every single person that you've contacted. Sometimes you might have a one-off with the teacher, and in your content and later in the findings, you can just say that you talked to the teacher. You don't necessarily need to have them as a contacted party unless they become a regular person. So those are some comments I have about contacted parties. What are your thoughts? Do you have any questions right off the bat about contacted parties? Okay. All right. Now we want to talk about findings. Now, on our website, we have a sample template that's out there. And in it, it has this italicized paragraph that talks about some of the things you might include in your report. And that's what's listed here. So when you're talking in your report, we're not worried about on this day I did this and on this day I did that. What that does not do is give like a final solution to anybody who's reading the report. Let's say you're talking about education and you're like, things have changed in the 3 months. Well, if I start at the beginning of the report and I just, only say something based on that, it's like, oh, well, wait a minute, down later in the report, the information changed. That's not as helpful for court personnel to be able to process that information. And that's who our audience is. It's our lawyers, it's our judge, it's people who need to be able to make a decision about that information. One of the first things you want to include is how your relationship with the child is going. What does it look like? How have you interacted? Not just, they're happy to see me, but they smiled, they came up and hugged me, they waved from the corner, whatever those kinds of things are, that indicates kind of progression in relationship. And it gives everybody an idea of how this child is relating to you. And later on, it might even be a comparison of how they're relating to another person on the case. You kind of always want to comment on their placement, whether that's intact or with a family that's not their home family. How do they interact with the people there? The adults, the siblings, whomever. Is it stable, and what makes you think it's stable? The mom says something, the foster mom says something to the kids and they react, or they cower in fear, or whatever it is that you are observing. Attachment is a big issue. Then we've got things like medical and mental health updates. And this can be, you got this information. It's not always something that's necessary when it's just like, oh, they had all their shots. You know what? That's a caseworker thing. This is more like these are things we're trying to keep tabs on. You're welcome to put in, if you have that information, foster mom said she took him to the doctors and the doctor said everything's great. Okay. Definitely focusing on daycare and educational needs. Daycare is considered educational, so it does need to be included. We do hope people are observing kids in their daycare situations. Anything that needs to be updated for IEPs or lack thereof. Struggles. A lot of people put in the grades that they know about, etc. Make sure information about visitations are included when you observe the child with the natural parents, and even if there are sibling visits going on. Actually, I have a case where they see the grandmother, and so that's important too. So those are all different things that can go on. If you have an older child, talking about independence planning and what's going on in that arena, as well as any cultural considerations that are going on. We need to make sure that we are keeping that in the front of our heads, that all of the child's needs are getting met across the board. Okay, so I'm going to skip best interest case study for now. So those are just major areas for findings that you would include. They don't have to be in this order. Typically, people start with the interactions with the CASA because that feels good in terms of opening it, and that's fine. But no specific order that needs to go in there. And there might be things in addition to this. I have a kid who's got some issues, legal issues. And so that is a section that often ends up in here as we report out what's going on in other cases in a different county. So that's just a comment there. All right, so here's the case that we're gonna take care of today to talk a little bit. It's Mariah Red is the child. She's a 5-month-old infant who is Black and in traditional foster care. The hospital notified DCFS when Mariah was born because she tested positive for PCP. She is natural mom's 3rd child. Natural mom said she'd been using Sherms, which is cigarettes dipped in PCP, on and off since she was 16. The oldest child for natural mother is in maternal grandmother's guardianship, and that's 10-year-old Buddy. Mom's 7-year-old son Tyrone lives with his father, and the newest baby Mariah and mom attended a mother baby treatment program after she was born until mother left against medical advice. So these are some of the things that we might find in the petition, or the basic information that comes prior to us even getting the case. So you've sat down with your advocate manager, you're looking at stuff. This is all stuff that everybody's got. We don't need to put the petition into your first report. Everybody's got it. If you need to make a comment on it, then you do, but it's not like we need to do a recitation of what's in the petition. Is that clear for folks? Okay. And I realize, I think there's chats going on and I don't see them as much. Okay. So I don't know, can one of my coworkers be my chat monitor? Maybe Aaron? And then you can tell me if there's something I need to add into what's going on. All right. So then we're going to have a conversation with the caseworker. Sarah, you want to read that?
Sure thing. So, conversation with caseworker. Natural mother has not been in treatment since leaving the program. Natural mother was out of touch for the first couple of months, but lately has called about visitation. Caseworker is unwilling to start visits until natural mother obtains substance abuse treatment. Caseworker is asking for a psychological evaluation. Caseworker says natural mother is not following the service plan. She provides natural mother plenty of opportunities, but natural mother does not follow through. Mariah is doing well in her foster placement. Her health is good. She's attached to her foster. Foster home is adoptive if return home is not viable. Caseworker has not been in touch with other family members about placement. She will do a home study on natural mother's sister if the court believes she should do one.
All right. So what in this conversation with your caseworker do you think belongs in your CASA report? I'd love if you guys came off mute and talked with us.
The things that would go in the report is that she has not recently been in treatment since she left the program. And that she has recently been calling about visitation. And I don't know, because actually the caseworker should cover most of the second part. The caseworker is telling us this and we should be looking out for it, but it's not something we spoke with mom about.
Right. And are you talking about like attached in the foster home? Is that one you're thinking, Jenny?
It was mainly just reading through the second bullet point.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, if you've observed that if you've already have we been to the house yet, or is this just the conversation? Yeah, then a lot of this is stuff to be aware of and like follow up on when we do go visit to see if we have the same experience as the caseworker. Because in theory, the knowledge of the caseworker is what should be shared in their report, unless it's egregious and we know it's not being shared or it affects what we're doing. So I think most of this is
yeah. Yeah, so the fact that she's calling about visitation is certainly very important. Sometimes people put in that they are asking for a psychological, and part of that is that she's asking for visits, but the caseworker is saying no because she hasn't gotten her services. So like that's the barrier right now to those visits. So that's an important piece to that. But yeah, all that other stuff about the service plan and things, that's caseworker deal. And then one of the things Jenny said is like, great, I'm glad caseworker said she's doing well, but let's corroborate that. Let's go see in the foster home if that's the same thing we're experiencing. And then we can say, you know, CASA observed and caseworker reported kind of thing. So we've got two people saying the same thing. That's really powerful information at that point. I do think that it is important to say that caseworker has not been in touch with the other family members, since being placed with family is so important in our world. I'm not saying that the caseworker isn't doing it. I'm just saying she hasn't done it. Maybe the court isn't even aware that caseworker is asking to see if the court asks about it. So we just make a statement. Okay. All right, let's move on to the first foster home visit. Erin?
First foster home visit. Foster mother is a white single mother who runs an in-home daycare. When I arrived, it was nap time and there were several little kids napping in playpens in the living room. Foster mother has 3 biological children, ages 15, 13, and 10, who were at school. Foster mother showed me around the house, which was messy with kid stuff, but clean. I peeked in on Mariah, who was napping on foster mother's bed with pillows arranged to keep her from rolling off. She was appropriately dressed and appeared to be clean. As we sat at the kitchen table to talk, I heard a repeated beep from the living room, a low battery warning for a smoke detector. The foster mother described how small Mariah was when she first came to live at foster mother's. Foster mother said Mariah was buried in the blankets when caseworker dropped her off. Foster mother told me that Mariah had qualified for early childhood services because of her exposure to PCP in utero, but Mariah had been given a clean bill of health and was released from early childhood services. Foster mother said she never planned to adopt, only foster, but Mariah has stolen her heart and now she just wants to keep her.
All right, so what are you hearing and seeing here that you would like to include in the report?
Well, one thing would be the foster mother is willing to adopt her.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the same thing we heard from the caseworker previously. So again, corroborated evidence. It's fantastic.
One of the considerations for me would be the cultural part of it.
Mm-hmm.
Mariah is Black, the foster mom is white. At her age, she might, if she has family willing, to adopt her,
Mm-hmm.
it helps her to be around people who look like her. She might be more comfortable with that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a consideration which would be important for me. And the fact that she's napping on foster mom's bed, does she just take naps there, or is that where she sleeps at night too? Or
Okay.
does she have a space of her own to sleep?
All right. So it sounds like we don't have the whole story here. All we know is that we experienced this one place where she's napping. We can't decide if that's a good thing or if it does happen at night, etc. We need to ask more information, right? Would you tell them that what would you say about the placement in terms of the conditions of the home?
I would definitely want to report the fact that this smoke detector alarm was going off.
Okay.
And it says that there are several children napping, but we don't know the number. So we don't know how many children she's caring for or fostering, which I think would be important information to get.
Very good. Yep.
Would it be important to mention that there are kids napping in playpens in the living room while Mariah was napping in bed? Why the discrepancy? Why are not all the kids napping in the playpens?
Yeah, I would want to ask foster mother rather than make an evaluation about that. Since she is running a daycare, who knows? Maybe she does daycare in one space and her own kids and fosters in another space. I don't know. Maybe it's age. Maybe she ran out of playpens. I don't know.
But that should be an okay question to ask, right?
I think so, yes. And so, yes, we have a case study here that only has a little bit of information in it. And as you sit down and put your stuff in your contact logs, these are some of the questions that you go, well, if I had to report today, I would be missing this little piece of information. I should make sure I ask about that next time I go visit. So that's that's one of the reasons that when you're writing your notes, you're processing this and you're talking it through. The other way to do it is contact your advocate manager and tell them kind of what's gone on. And I know when I'm talking with people, I'm like, gosh, I wonder about X, Y, or Z. So if you're feeling like you're not sure what to ask next or what you kind of missed, talk to somebody about it. Okay. But yeah.
The thing that grasps me as I reread this is the foster mother has 2 teenagers and a pre-adolescent at home. I would want to visit when they were there. I would like to see how they interact with the child. Are they jealous? Are they helpful? Are they, what is the relationship between three natural children at transition ages?
So yeah, that's something we need to get done. Very good. All right. Let's go on to the sibling visit.
Okay, the sibling visit. Maternal grandmother was holding Mariah when I arrived. Later, she put Mariah in the bouncy seat to feed her a bottle. Maternal grandmother said she lives with her husband, natural mother, and natural mother's son, Buddy. Maternal grandmother said her husband is a hard worker and a good provider. She married her husband when natural mother was 7. Maternal grandmother said she has another daughter 2 years older than natural mother living in Texas with her husband and a 3-year-old son. Maternal grandmother said that natural mother was 15 when she had Buddy, way too young to concentrate on a baby. Natural mother was always out playing and going to high school. She graduated, but natural mother ended up raising Buddy. Natural mother tried to pull rank on her until maternal grandmother obtained guardianship. Maternal grandmother seemed to minimize natural mother's drug problem, like she doesn't know what natural mother is doing. She said natural mother will have to get it together because maternal grandmother cannot take another baby. Maternal grandmother said Buddy is a good boy and gets good grades. He sings in the church choir with her. Buddy knows that natural mother is his mother, not his sister. I found Buddy shooting baskets in the driveway. I spoke to him for a few minutes. He told me he likes to play basketball and he is in 5th grade. He gets good grade and goes to church with his mom, maternal grandmother. Maternal grandfather was in the backyard mowing. He said he's not in charge of the kids. He returned to mowing.
All right. What are you seeing and hearing that you want to make sure is part of your report?
The thing that jumps out at me is the attitude of the grandfather. He's uninvolved. I don't think that's a good thing.
Okay, so I want to refocus on the fact that this is a sibling visit. This is not where the child lives, right? So how does this relate to Mariah?
This seems to be focused on Buddy and natural mom, but not Mariah. She got her bottle and she's in her rocker. She's
Yeah.
in the seat.
There's
So
no
the focus is not
interaction.
on her at all.
Right. So what did you just say, Sharon? I think that's an important point.
There was no interaction between the 2 siblings.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, you're there for a sibling visit.
He's outside, she's inside.
Yeah. So one of the things that's important about this situation is that Mariah is connected and seeing family. You know, she's in traditional foster care, but for some reason, grandmother takes her for sibling visits, whether or not they're actually seeing Buddy. So that's important pieces of information, but she's not going to take her on. She's not willing to adopt or guardianship this child. So that's an important piece of information. Does that mean that maternal grandmother is good respite care for traditional foster mother? Maybe. I don't know. But what we need to make sure is we don't find ourselves judging this family as if they are the person who is taking care of Mariah long term. So if maternal grandmother doesn't understand the drug problem, that's not something we are going to deal with. If caseworker seems to think that needs to be part of the service plan, fine. But at this point, it's unlikely. Anybody could say mom has or doesn't have a drug problem, and it doesn't really matter to the case of Mariah. So, you know, I think it's important that when we look at this, we realize that a lot of this is just ancillary information. Sometimes we get caught up in other families that are involved in the case, but that's not really the details of what's going on for the child themselves. I do think that we have more information about the other daughter who is living in Texas that the caseworker said they might contact. So, you know, they're a 3-year-old son. That's kind of close in age for Mariah, who's 5 months old. So maybe that really does need to be considered. I don't know, but we should give them that pieces of information. Okay. So tough interaction. It doesn't seem like there's a whole heck of a lot going on. My next steps might be to contact the caseworker and say, why are we doing sibling visits and what should they look like? And do we need to help them do them differently?
Okay.
Okay. Right. The medical record forwarded from caseworker.
So birth tested positive for PACP at birth, APGAR score 7 out of 8, 5-day detox period post-birth, experiencing tremors and irritability. Nurses reported mother was hostile and refused services. Mother was discharged the day after the birth and did not return to visit baby. Clinic. Referred to the high-risk infant program, followed for 3 months and then released into the well baby program. Showed no developmental delays or neurological deficits. Pediatrician. Foster mother has been on schedule with inoculations and well baby care. Mariah has had only the usual colds and earaches. Recent tests indicated potential abnormalities and follow-up appointment was requested.
All right. So what here is stuff that we need to be focusing on for the report?
That she's not showing any symptoms at this point of, drug related issues, at least to the point where the baby doesn't need any monitoring. However, separately, there are recent tests that indicated potential abnormalities, and so they requested a follow-up appointment. So if possible, I would want to know what I would want to talk to foster mom about, like what the appointment is, and just what they were interested in doing, because I could follow up with the caseworker to make sure that whatever appointment it is that we're actually getting, and that if there's any support, depending on what the abnormalities are, that we can make sure that we follow up, because a lot of times referrals take like a long time. So we want to make sure that we're taking care of that. And also, I think noting like the situation with the foster home, like when we're talking about the placement, the fact that the foster mom is keeping up with all of the appointments, because of course with little babies, that's a lot. So, she's managing to keep on top of that with everything else that she's doing.
Right. So how do we know that information? All the things you just said.
The caseworker,
And how does the caseworker know it?
medical record,
So
which
if I'm putting this into a report, I am saying something along the lines of caseworker told me that they found out from somebody else that this is what's going on. So we're like, they said that they said. Do you see how that's like 3 people down of information? And one of the things, Jenny, you started to say was like, okay, well, then I want to follow up with foster mom and see how that appointment is going. We want to try and get as much firsthand information as we can to include in that report so that it's not he said, she said kind of a thing. What it's not that hearsay isn't allowed in our reports. It's that when we get too far down that tunnel, they're like, well, what, hold on, who said that said what? And that's not helpful information at that point. So when you're hearing things and you're like, gosh, I really want that piece of information, I really need to show that there was potential abnormalities and that they're doing something about it. Let's find out what that information is so that we can then report it. Okay. So I think that that is a lot of really useful information, but just coming from the medical record forwarded by the caseworker, not so much. That makes sense? Okay. All right, let's have a second foster home visit.
Second foster home visit. Foster mother's 3 biological children were present and the daycare children were awake, so there was a lot of activity. Foster mother seemed to take everything in stride. She said, no one is crying, so it's good. Mariah was being carried around the house by her big siblings and appeared happy. I spoke to each of foster mother's children and they all seemed like typical kids. When I asked foster mother why she wants to adopt Mariah, she said, we love her and we're all attached to her. Caseworker told her a family member had called about Mariah and foster mother expressed concern that they would take Mariah away from her. I asked about how she plans to deal with Mariah's different racial background. Foster mother said, kids are kids, we're all human, and Mariah will be a member of our family equal to everyone else. She told me that she cares for kids from all races in her daycare and they get along just fine.
All right, so this actually develops some of the questions that we had after the first foster home visit. What are you seeing that needs to be included in some of the report?
It's a negative, but the last bullet point indicates that the foster mother doesn't intend to have Mariah participate in things unique to her race.
Okay. And that's a good statement. Okay. I know you said it was negative. It's negative because we know that that's an important piece for Mariah is to make sure, but it's really just a statement. You know, when asked, foster mother said she did not have any plans for socializing Mariah with other Black children or whatever it is that you are reporting on, right? The court might look at it and go, oh, she's 5 months. And the court might look at it and go, oh, we're looking to send her to Texas. You know, who knows? I don't know what the court's reaction is going to be. It's not mine to say. We are simply stating what's going on. And that's an excellent way to take care of this piece of information. What else?
Mariah's interaction with the siblings.
Yeah, we're seeing stuff here, aren't we? Now, I would say, based on what we're hearing at the court, is that they don't want to hear appeared happy. They want to have more detail about what that is. You know, she was smiling and laughing. They were playing hot potato with her. I don't know. That's a terrible thing to do with a kid, I suppose. But, you know, whatever it is, try to get that really detailed. Don't feel like you're taking up too much space. I am not worried about CASA reports being long. We rarely hit 2 pages of content, which is spot on. Spot on. That means that we are covering all the major areas and giving the kind of like the final outcome for that reporting period. And we are giving enough detail that it is not like, saw Mariah with her siblings, period. That's not enough. That's not enough. So.
I don't mean to monopolize, but bullet point number 2 concerns me.
Okay.
There's nothing in there about the kids' regard, the foster mother's natural children's regard for Mariah. You know, they seem like typical kids. Okay, I'm not sure what that means because there ain't no 2 kids that are the same. But there's nothing about they expressed their affection, how much they enjoy taking care of Mariah. Anything like that would seem to indicate some kind of bond if, in fact, the foster mother would like to petition for adoption. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with the first statement. It just doesn't go deep enough for me.
Exactly, Bob. I think that's exactly what the court is saying, is that that's fine, but as far as notes and like giving details, that's not enough. And they want to see more in depth, the 10-year-old, the 13-year-old, and the 15-year-old. Maybe they were all different with Mariah. Granted, I'll give the case that, we're on foster home visit number 2. But that is definitely something that you want to be able to expound upon if you're going to be able to put that into your report. Okay.
I have a question. Is it okay or is it important to mention in the report that there are 3 biological children, how many ever daycare children, and Mariah and other foster kids? Because the first line, it says there was a lot of activity, but foster mom seemed to take everything in stride. Would the judge or anyone reading the report like to know just how many kids are in there? Foster mom's an adult, she's taking it in stride. How about all the kids in the midst of the activity?
I see no problem with adding that in.
Okay.
What you're doing is you're setting up what it is that you're talking about.
Okay.
I don't believe that all of our wonderful court personnel remember every detail report to report. So if you're talking about the activity in the home and you want to say there were 5 daycare kids ranging from 0 to 3 and, put it in context, and that is okay.
Would it be important to say if she's licensed or not?
I don't know. I think that depends on the situation. I would probably follow up with the caseworker to find out that piece of information. If it becomes problematic or an important piece of this, then yeah, we let the court know.
Okay.
I know that it just could be the foster mother's humor, and I wouldn't put it in the report, but I would, it might be something you need more visitation or more information when she said, it's a good thing no one's crying.
Yeah. Agreed with you, Chris. All right. So if I go back to our report format that we have here. So yeah, those are all the contacted parties and things. What's missing from there is the texts or calls that you made to set those up. So as far as contacted parties, I'm not going to kind of dwell on that. But, we don't have a ton of details about how the child interacted with CASA. So what's missing from the case notes, did you pick her up? Did she cry when you picked her up, etc. So those are important things. Maybe nobody lets you hold her. I don't know. Maybe you didn't ask. Maybe you're not that kind of a person. Don't really want snuggle time. That's fine too. We want to talk about the placement, the interactions that she had with each of those different siblings. Does it seem stable? Are they attached? Just because Foster mother reports, we're attached. What are you seeing? What does that actually look like? The medical and mental health updates, we want to make sure we go back and corroborate some of that evidence before we get it into the report. Daycare educational needs, this one's a little iffy here because we do have the daycare at the foster home kind of thing, but that doesn't mean that you don't comment on it. If you've been there and you're like, oh my gosh, Mariah's just in the corner wailing for her bottle because foster mom has 6 other kids she's trying to deal with. Okay, well, good to know. Observations about sibling visits here. We don't have any parent visits yet, but we do want to comment about why there aren't any parent visits. Independence planning is not an issue. Cultural considerations might be. It's okay to put it in here that there's no plan yet. Doesn't mean that there won't be, but maybe that reminds everybody that this is an important piece. Okay. Now, I know some of you are like, oh my gosh, the best interest case summary. I encourage you to take a stab at this when you write your report, of putting down 3 to 5 bullets of things that you think are important, actionable items. Okay. I also fully expect for the advocate managers to probably rewrite them. So one of the things I like about it when the advocates take a stab at it is sometimes, a lot of times, what I'm seeing in this case summary is things they didn't talk about in the findings. You know, so somebody says, hey, this is what's going on at school in the best case interest summary, but then they didn't talk about school at all in the findings. Well, that means we're missing something up above, and we need to go back and pull all that, put those details in before we summarize it. You can't summarize something that didn't exist above. So it's a good checkpoint for yourselves. But I do think sometimes we get stuck in, oh, they're happy, all is well, things are fine. And that's not really a summary that helps move the case forward. So that is kind of what the advocate managers are working on when we are putting together those case summary bullet points. So I want everybody to walk away knowing, hey, take a good stab at it. You're doing a great job, and it's okay if it changes. How do you feel about that?
I've always said I feel much better that it's proofread and corrected before it goes to court.
All right. All right.
So
Yeah.
the best, and I write it, and my advocate manager, she corrects it. She's very thorough about that. But I have a question. When you, no, I mean that in a nice way.
I know.
But this is where my struggle, my challenge is rather, if you have multiple siblings in your case,
Mm-hmm.
do they all get the same amount of best interest case summaries, or?
It depends. When I've got the same information to say about all 3 kids, I just put it in one line.
Okay.
You know, if there are different, sometimes there are kids that are doing, I have a medically complex case where one of the children has some significant issues, and the other child is what we might call a typical kid that sometimes just gets lost on the wayside. And most of our case summary is about the medical neglect. So that's okay. You know, as long as I don't forget about the other kid, it's okay.
And in the same question, similar question. So all of these, the findings, do I do them separately for each sibling?
Typically, yes.
Okay.
So most of these things are going to be things that you are reporting about for how that child is doing in all of these different things. Now, let's say in this example, there was Mariah and a twin or something like that. Well, the reality is that the parent still isn't visiting due to this situation. You don't need to repeat that for both kids. Kind of what we've been doing is you put all of your information for the first child in one spot, and then all of your information for the next child in the next spot. And then if you've got some paragraphs that relate to everybody, we put them at the end. Honestly, our report format is fluid enough and acceptable enough by the court that if I need to put that summary paragraph at the top, that's okay. We kind of figure it out for each report. Just like every case is different, we have a template, but we're going to address the needs for the case differently if it needs to be addressed that way.
Thank you.
So I know that's not a hard and fast rule, and sometimes that frustrates people, but it's not really about fitting inside the format. It's more about making sure we do for the child what needs to get done. All right, so I am going to ask to see if anybody has certain things they want to. Do you have something you're struggling with specifically on your case that you would like some help formatting in terms of words or feedback or anything like that? Now you started to ask some of the questions, so I'm sorry, who was going to go say?
I have a question.
Sure, Chris.
Yeah, I've been having, my child is residential placement, and they have gone through some really stringent organizational issues, and it's causing, for example, my caseworker at the residential, not my DCFS, but my caseworker at the residential is the caseworker and also the therapist for the child, which in itself is a conflict of interest because there are things I know she can't share with me, but she's not sharing anything with me. She doesn't respond to emails. She doesn't respond to phone calls. And she also doesn't do that with the caseworker. So I'm not taking it personally.
Good.
But I had talked to Stacy about it, and Stacy kind of cautioned me and said, and maybe I misunderstood, and that's why I'm asking for clarification. She kind of cautioned me and said the judge doesn't necessarily want to hear what they're not doing. And I always felt that it was my job to ensure if things aren't happening. And I'm in a quandary. I wrote my report. I already gave it because my court date is the 21st.
Okay.
And I told Stacy in the letter, yeah, you may have to change this whole thing. I'm really sorry. I really need some clarification on that.
Absolutely. I do believe that this is kind of an across the board struggle that we're having sometimes with various personnel who aren't giving us information. Specifically, when their title is caseworker, judge really does not care for, like, she's mad at me and I'm mad at her. And I'm not saying that's what you're saying, Chris, but she's like, you know
I'm
what?
not.
You keep that private, you guys figure it out. Be adults and get it done. On the other hand, we have had moments when we have had serious issues that CASA has been very instrumental in taking care of. I think what is super important is to say, something along the lines of, looking for XYZ information, contacted person at Allendale didn't get it, contacted caseworker. She also reported she didn't get it. Leave it at that. Let somebody else make that interpretation of somebody's not doing their job.
I think that's, I told Stacy, I tried to use discretion and not just point a finger and say XYZ is not doing it. But and I didn't even say specifically, I did define her position. I even said, I realize that's a conflict of interest, but information
I wouldn't even make that assessment in your report.
Okay, it's in there, so she can take that out.
Okay. That might be construed as us having too much information, too much ability to assess the situation. This is specifically
was
hard
trying
for
to say-
CASAs who have like an actual maybe degree in social work or something, you know, they're like, well, I know this, but I'm like, yeah, but the court's thinking of you as CASA, not a social worker.
I was trying to show empathy for the position.
Okay.
And that's why I put it in.
Yes.
And because
Well-
I'm an educator, I know there are things she can't share with me, but gosh, I'm frustrated.
Yeah, well, and that's another conversation. I'm not sure why she can't share it with you. But yeah, so I do think that it is important to dance around it correctly and be very fact-based about it and simply putting it out there as information. I do think that the judge is more sensitive to interactions between people on the case, and we should all get along better. But the judge is not our only audience. We often will say, oh, well, the judge doesn't want it that way. And then I got to go say, wait a minute. But I have a GAL who might be able to do something with this if I have this in here. So I think, and sometimes when I'm talking with the judge, especially with people who've just been sworn in, sometimes I feel like the judge thinks the report is just for her. And that's her prerogative to think that.
Sure.
But you know what? I'm doing my job as a CASA and doing it the right way, whether I get chewed out by the judge or not. And believe me, it's been a fun year. But I'm also happy to be that person in between CASA and, you know, that's my role. That's all of our roles. I say mine, but I mean my whole staff friends here. We do that and we take that and we learn from that. And we know, okay, well, next time I edit a report, I'm going to adjust this a little bit because I know that message isn't being received well. And it's not that we need to take every single one of our learnings and say, hey, you should all know this now and do it better. That's unrealistic. That's not a good thing for us to keep passing along to you guys. The 6 of us will learn it, we'll massage it. If you want an explanation, we can help move you forward with it. But, you know, I think you've all figured out it's a team effort. I think I personally love that we can make some very strong statements without being mean. So, other questions that you have? Does anybody have a tip they want to add? Jenny, you're up next.
I wanted to ask you to talk a little more about cultural considerations.
Sure.
Now, one of the things that I've been witness to was the foster mom made sure the child went to a special hairdresser.
Nice.
Would focus on her needs and what her type of hair needed in order for her to feel good about herself and things like that. So that's one. What would be some other cultural considerations that we could maybe support our foster families in providing?
Right. Does anybody have anything they'd like to add before we hear Sherry's version?
We adopted Black children, and they had us going to like a church that had all races and just to have different cultural experiences that they wouldn't have had. And our family learned from it so much too. So it was a learning effort with everything, but to attend cultural events and to attend, except I have to tell that not everybody celebrates the one after Christmas, Kwanzaa, because I asked about that one time. She goes, oh, we don't celebrate that. That's when people come right from Africa or, you know, that type of thing. So we learn things that way too, but just exposing them to other of their same culture families was a big help.
Yeah.
And they helped us. You know, they would explain what was important. You have to have your girl's hair right, or teach your boys they can't wear hoodies in the grocery store. They were very helpful that way.
Yeah. Skincare. There's a lot of hygiene issues for people who, I know how to take care of my white skin. I don't know a lot about other things. We hear the word ashy a lot with folks who I figured out what that means on me too, but but I don't know, Sharon. I almost want to call you out as a subject matter expert, as someone who might be able to help guide somebody with ideas, since you've had this personal experience.
At least, to look and, say, because I could use help this week. Gum out of a black hair. I was like, oh my gosh, this is horrible, or sand when they were little. Sand in that black hair was horrible. We even tried a vacuum cleaner. I mean, it was horrible, but so we looked for help that way too. So
right.
I would just say, making friends with people that their culture was the biggest help for us.
I will say, just kind of a plug for KIN's monthly play groups that they're having in Johnsburg. It's open for all foster and adoptive kids, whether they're in the middle of a case or afterwards or whatever. But one of the things that they're finding, it's in Johnsburg. I know it's a trip for some people, but it might be worth it to go and be around other foster kids, that you don't have to explain, I'm a foster and that's what this means. To find other people who have a shared racial background or cultural background with yourself, to talk to other foster parents or natural parents who might be able to fill you in, like Sharon just did on things. So sometimes, whether it's a faith community, whether it's a play group, finding those right groups of people is what can help those families. And sometimes our advocacy looks like, I know Johnsburg is a ways away, but I think this might be a really good thing for you to go do. So yeah, if you're finding things like that, then you might, you might push for that.
I don't know if any of you guys have foster parents, but Let It Be Us is having an event. And last year, I don't have, my kid doesn't have a foster, but last year they reached out to me and I let my DCFS person know, because she had several kids in foster. They will give scholarships to go to this benefit. It's called the Candy Cottage. Are you aware of it, Sharie?
Yeah, where
So
they make gingerbread houses.
Right. And then give them away. If anybody's interested, I can send the contact to Sharie. Lisa Harvey sent 2 families last year, and she said the families just had a blast.
Oh,
So if
that's
anybody's
awesome.
interested, I'll send it to you, Sharie, the
Okay.
contact,
Thank
and
you.
then you can share with people who have foster.
Yeah,
Caroline's
I
just
know
an
that I
amazing
wanted
woman.
to go, but I didn't know that the fosters could do the family thing on a
Yeah, we have to pay. They
Right, we
do
pay.
give scholarships for the foster families.
Yeah,
And Caroline
that's
is an amazing woman. She's fostered 5 kids, I think, and adopted, or she's fostered more than that, but adopted 5. So she's in the know.
most excellent. All right. Any tips out there that people, oh, I'm sorry, Bob has a question.
Hey, I have, I have two siblings who are currently living together, and I get along really good with the 7-year-old boy. Not that I don't get along with the 4-year-old girl, but I don't know that much about her, and I've been trying to, just get to know the kids really well. So on my last visits, I've been going to visit the kids, but I have not been to a parent's visit. I have not visited their schools.
Okay.
What do you think I should prioritize? School visit, parent, or visit with the parents?
Bob, I'm gonna unfortunately defer your question to needing to understand a little bit more about what exactly is going on in the case, and I'm happy to talk about that with you. Who, I forget, Alyssa, are you there?
Alyssa. Yeah.
Alyssa. So maybe the 2 of you can connect. I'm not
Okay.
sure what the process is and where you're at in the case. Yes, all of those things are important. Does not mean you have to have it done in time to get that report in next time. Maybe it's on the to-do list. We can only do so much in the time that we have.
Yeah, that's what
and that's okay. That is okay. Just because I put that whole list out there doesn't mean that you have to do it that way. So I just want to share a couple things with you. First of all, I mentioned on our website, we have things. So under advocate resources on our website, we have the Learning Center, and you may well have been there before, but a little bit further down, and I will update this a little bit after our recording today, but we have these reporting things that are here for you to use as tools. So that sample template is what listed permanency, siblings, things like that. We have a sample good report that we use in training. This was how to write reports back when we first changed the format, so that might not be too helpful for folks right now. The most up-to-date acronyms list is here. So I wanted to make sure that you knew that those resources were available to you, as well as if you just don't remember where it is and you want it, I'm sure one of us would be happy to send it to you in email so that you have it. So one other thing I wanted to look at, and I had to redact this stuff so that you can see it, but in your contact logs, so when you're in your case and you have contact logs here, notice these blue buttons over here on the side. They are extraordinarily useful. The search button can allow you to pull up, let's say, all your child visits that you've had in the last whatever period of time you put in there. And then the view notes button shows you all the notes that you have in your contact log. And what you can do here is do a Control F for a find and go through and find all sorts of things. You're like, gosh, I know we talked about homeschooling. Where was that? And you stick it in there. So you can find things easily. What I do is I print off, if I'm writing a report from scratch, I print off all of the pages of my notes in one document. And I go through and I highlight stuff about the major points that I want to include in my report. And then I'm able to know that this is the paragraph I want. This is the paragraph I want. And this is the paragraph I want. And then I check my highlights and I go, oh, I missed that point. Got to go back and put that in that paragraph. And I'm ready to go. And my contacted logs are easy because all I do is I list them all right there. Okay. So I want you to know, I know that some of us don't love Optima, and I understand that. I want you to be able to use it as a useful tool. We've had some comments about people, they're like, what do you mean voice to text? I love voice to text. Don't love it inside of Optima. Voice to text in your email. You know, hit the microphone, talk to your email, send it to yourself, copy and paste it into Optima. It's all good. You know, there's just a lot of options for us to have out there that sometimes we just grow and take advantage of. And if anybody wants a one-on-one sit down, let us know. I'm happy to do it as trainer. Your advocate manager will really helpful too. Okay.
I just have another thought. What Bob was mentioning about visiting the parent visits and schools.
Yeah.
In some of the cases or situations I've been in, I'm not welcomed with the parents. And in another situation, the school is very insistent that a visit from an outside person is too disruptive to the program. So I'm not allowed to visit the school, and the parents have voiced a concern about my being present during the sibling visit. So I just decided to respect that and not fight it.
Yeah. If it's endemic to the case, your advocate manager, your GAL, we're going to figure out how to get it done.
Okay.
Okay. Sometimes things are just us being nosy kind of things. And I get that.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's important information that we need to go look for. again, it will be case by case, and that's okay. Just because we went over all these pieces today it's not a hammer saying include this in your report. But it's somewhat of a finite list for you to be able to hone in on what it is you need to do as an advocate.